Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, our main presenter kind of went over on time, so we're a little backed up. But I wanted to make sure that you had access to the room.
I do. I don't know where Liz is, but
Okay, well, I added everyone as a co-host, so they should be able to pop in. But if they aren't, I'm going to make you the host now. And so if you see, there's a waiting room and you'll see something pop up that says this person's in the waiting room, and you can let them in when you're ready. But if you see your co-host come up.
yeah, she's here now. I just let her in.
And so you'll need to make her a co-host. No, maybe not actually.
I have no idea how to do that, but
I will walk you through it. So if you click on the participants button on the bottom.
okay.
And then you'll see on the right, there's a big panel and you'll see her name. So if you just hover over it, it should say, there's a button that should say more.
Yeah.
And then you click that and it'll give you the option to make her a co-host.
Okay, but do we have to let everyone else in then?
Yes, so someone will have to admit people. We have to have a waiting room and a password for security reasons. But there's a notification every time someone tries to log in. I think you can give a few minutes before you start talking so everybody has a chance to come into the room and be part of the conversation.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about screen sharing or anything like that?
No, I think we can figure that out.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't see my image there, but I don't know.
There's a way to start your video on the bottom left corner. There should be a start stop video button.
Oh, okay. There it is. Okay. Good morning.
Great. We're in. Okay. I have to run out and make sure the people in the water room and the shelter room are where they need to go. So I'm going to pop out, but I'll come back in.
Great.
Okay. So Anna, you're in charge of letting people into the meeting?
I guess.
You know how to do that?
I think something comes up on the screen and then I just click admit.
Okay. So that's throughout this thing. It would be nice if somebody else was doing that.
Yeah. Well, this is quite, it's just one of those online things, I think, where there's one person doing way too many, one person with a lot of responsibilities. So
okay.
We'll just, and who knows, maybe no one will come and just you and I will talk for a little
right.
while and then get back to our days.
Exactly. So far, it's just us. Nobody's beckoning.
Which also means that I'm going to actually bring my computer and go get myself a cup of coffee while we're waiting. How are you? Why are you out west?
Why am I out west?
Do you live out there?
I retired and we moved out here.
Oh, wow.
My husband always wanted to move here. We were really unhappy in State College.
For all those years.
For 23 years.
Wow.
And just as soon as I turned 60 and could retire, I retired. And I thought, if I'm going to start a whole new life, I better get on with it.
Yeah. So how long have you been out there?
We're in our second year, but the first year was all COVID. So I really didn't meet new people or, it wasn't the same as I had hoped it would be.
Right.
But
did you get
now it can start. I just got my second vaccine yesterday.
I'm getting my second one on Monday.
Oh, good. So where do you live now?
I live in Nyack, which is just north of New York City.
Right.
And then my partner just inherited his mother's rent control apartment.
Fantastic.
On the Upper West Side. So we live there most of the time. And I'm actually getting ready to sell my house in the coming year.
This house that you're in right now?
This a great house that I'm in right now, but I've lived here for almost 30 years and all my kids are gone and there's just no good reason to have this house anymore. And they've all moved out to New Mexico.
Oh, that's what Helen said, that you might move out there.
Together. So we've started like looking for land and we're thinking about maybe building something. And
oh, that sounds like fun.
So yeah, same thing. Like I turn 60 next month. I'm not retiring, unfortunately. I have not, I did not organize my work life in such a way that that I could do that. But I am in this very cool endeavor, so I'm enjoying it a lot. Shh.
Right.
The
house looks great.
Yeah, it's a great.
I'm glad you're walking around. I get to see it.
It's like a really, it's built in 1880. I actually haven't done very
It
much
looks
to it,
well cared for.
but I always have had my studio in here, and
So what do you make in your studio?
I draw and do photography. Yeah, that is what I do. But it's been a while since I have been a professional artist in terms of, like showing and stuff like that.
Right.
My last show was, oh gosh, like 8 years ago in France. I had this sort of big museum exhibition. It was really amazing. And I don't know, after that, I just lost the,
It's a lot of,
I lost the verve for that part of it, which is actually just totally fine. It's like now I make things and I really enjoy it and it's part of my life. And I sell occasionally something here or there. Mostly I just give people stuff that they like.
that's what I was wondering, if you gave it away or what happened. I mean, I think about that, but I just make so much stuff that.
Right. Well, that's the thing with pottery, right?
Well, mine is really slow, but it still accumulates.
Right. I guess I meant more from the accumulation.
And it takes up space.
It takes
not
up a
like
different
drawing.
kind of space. Like I
Yeah.
have a huge, engineering flat file that I just can put, things in endlessly. Same with photographs, they're flat.
Right.
It's funny because I was actually for a very long time ago, I really dove into pottery. Absolutely love throwing and was sort of had a facility with it. And I started working in porcelain, which I just adore. And recently I was like, I should do that again. And I loved it so much. And there was this amazing little place on the Upper West Side that actually has like a porcelain facility. And that was just like, and what am I going to do with all that stuff?
Give it away.
I could just go and
people are happy to take it.
Right. My daughter-in-law was like, we need an entire set of dishes and ramen bowls and, and platters. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it for a year. I'll make all that stuff.
Yeah.
We'll have a home and then I'll stop.
Right. That sounds perfect.
But
well, I hand build everything, so I don't accumulate it as fast as if I was making it on the wheel.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you were only
Yeah.
hand builder. Oh, cool. So I looked very quickly, like before we talked.
This has all happened very quickly.
Yeah. And I don't mind being paid to have a nice conversation with an interesting person, right?
Well, I'm not being paid, I don't think, but I thought it would be nice to talk to you.
I looked very quickly at your website when Helen's like, did you ever meet Liz? I'm like, I'm absolutely sure. And then of course, and I said, is her son's name Miles and she's like, no, Dizzy.
Right,
like,
but it is Malin. His first name actually is Malin. So you were close.
Oh, I was close.
But we call him Dizzy. His middle name is Dizzy.
There was a musical reference there somehow.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. That's what you were going for.
And
right.
And I remember him like wildly climbing over furniture. And I remember
he doesn't do that anymore.
You don't, as far as you know.
Right. I mean, he certainly is still very physically active, but
and you had a amazing glass blowing studio in your back or something.
Yeah, we don't have that anymore. My husband just uses other people's spaces. It was, in Pennsylvania, we kind of needed that if he was going to do it because there wasn't anything else around.
Right. I sort of have this memory also because at the time I was, this is 100 years ago, but I worked in the art world for many, many years. I was at MoMA and then at Yale.
That's what it was, MoMA, not the Met.
And I did writing on artists. And I remember he was doing some blood glass pieces for Kiki Smith.
Right, we have some of those.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, through that time we ended up with a small collection of her work, which is, prints and drawings, and we have a suitcase that she drew all over, which is an interesting thing.
What is your son up to now?
He just graduated from Oberlin, and he's a computer engineer, and he's just started working in August for his first job. I mean, major job, not just working in a grocery store or something, for Amazon. And he's really into it. I mean, I'm super glad he's making money. He's moved out here, which is wonderful. I mean, he moved here because of Amazon, but also because we were going to be moving here. And just last week, he got his own apartment and has a friend out here he moved, is sharing that with, and it's very exciting.
Great. So you're close. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. And he he got a degree in film and computer science, a strange kind of mix of things. And I'm not sure what he'll do with the film, but he still likes doing it.
It doesn't matter. I mean, this is, I keep saying this is especially during COVID, and maybe since you're retired, this isn't true for you, but I've been, I've just given so many talks this year online, and for student groups and things like that. And they asked me about my background and, how did I go from, the art world into food, into this, into
exactly.
that.
That's what I'm wondering.
In college, I studied 12 languages, and I really attribute sort of my.
Can you speak all of them?
Many of them were classical. So
Okay.
I studied Latin and Sanskrit and classical Tamil. And Italian, which I speak, and French, which I read, and German, which I can read, and I really attribute my ability to kind of move from one career to another in large part to my study of language, and just kind of figuring out different systems or different ways that people think about things. And
right.
And so
well, that's interesting.
My youngest son is just finishing his first year at Kenyon.
Oh,
and
right up the road from Oberlin.
Yeah, right up the road. And he did a gap year last year in AmeriCorps, and then of course that got cut short because of COVID, and then he had to study remotely for half the semester, blah, blah. And we were talking recently about studying something purposeful that's going to get you a job versus studying
right
interest.
Well, he's in a liberal arts school, so
yeah, you got to find the balance between those two things, because even the things that aren't going to actually make a job are going to inform the way that you do your job,
right.
So he's super interested in birding, and I'm like, think about all the things you do when you're birding. You're observing closely, or you're writing things down. You're learning about you're learning about nature in a different way. You're looking at kind of tiny details of things. The same reason
right.
why literally everyone should take an art history class.
Right. I mean, and probably all those skills, just like your language skills, are going to inform whatever else he's doing. So he's a freshman?
He's a freshman.
Oh, yeah. He started during COVID. Yeah.
Because they had freshmen come back, freshmen start the year. And then
we have a friend, Helen and I have a friend whose daughter is a junior, I think.
Oh, really?
At Kenyon. Yeah. They should meet. I mean, she's fabulous.
That'd be great, because I feel like it's been such a hard, he was saying to me yesterday on the phone, I'm like, how are you doing? He's like, I'm done with the remote thing. He had this taste of his first semester, and he is a kid who is, he's a really hard worker, but he's a very deeply curious person.
Uh-huh.
And so, he's like, it's just, I go to the first semester, and he fell in love with biology. He never science has always been kind of a little hard for him, whatever. He's had this great professor, loved it, da, da, da. And he's I'd be walking back from class with my roommate who was also taking the class, and we would just be talking about all the things that we learned, and then we would go talk about them more, and we would study together, and that whole part of learning that happens.
Right. Well, her name is Lulu Yarber.
Lulu Yarber. What a
It's
cool-
actually Ulysses, but she goes, I think, by Lulu, but she might be going by Ulysses now.
Lulu Yarber. Well, his name is Omar Moros. Boy,
Omar.
that's
What's his last name?
Morosse. Moros.
M-O-R-A.
O-S-S-E.
Okay, okay.
And he's
I'll pass it along to her because I'm in touch with her too.
Yeah, do.
Yeah.
He's a bit shy. He's very tall.
She is too.
He's 6'5".
She's over 6 feet tall. She's
Well,
6'2" or something.
yeah. They should definitely meet because, I think partly like he just gets that whole thing of just like, oh, you're so tall. And that's always like the first part of the conversation.
So they have that in common to begin with,
Yeah,
right?
and they actually have a brain too, but whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. Wow. Well, I mean, that's why we sent Dizzy to Oberlin, was for the liberal arts education. And he ended up starting in film and was really excited about film, but didn't really know what else to do. Anyway, I guess between his junior and senior year, he did a internship at in St. Louis at Washington University, and did something where computer science linked with imaging biological processes. And so they were trying to show how oxygen moves through the trunk of a tree and
Oh, wow. Huh.
and up into the tree. It was really, and how do you get imaging of that that's accurate?
Right.
And so you never know where I mean, Dizzy always loved biology also, and was interested, he'd come home with all these amazing facts that I thought I liked biology, but they never taught us when we were in school.
Right.
Like now I always think that water is sticky. That's how he described it to me, that water is sticky. And so when I'm washing, I'm like, that makes perfect sense that we wash with it because it grabs everything and takes it with it.
Right.
And, there's just all these different ways of looking at things that make it more tangible or part of our life.
And it also makes your world more poetic.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's the thing that like there's so much, and for good reason. There is it is a luxury to go to college and just be studying whatever you want, especially if you don't have a lot of money.
That's for sure.
That said, this is, and I am actually, I am a fan of a core curriculum for the very reason that it's an equalizer. I believe it's an equalizer of a kind. So it just means that like not only rich kids can read books in college,
Right. As long as it doesn't just take over the whole space of learning.
Right, yeah, it's just like, some basic things that allow you to have a perspective on the world that's, that is creative and insightful and not just pure fact, because
right.
Of course it's, that's what's going to keep you going, emotionally
right.
through your life. And B, it's also going to allow you to advance, because if you're just doing like,
because it's curious, it's about being curious. Yeah, it's about putting connections together that aren't so obvious.
So it's all of this increasing focus on on going to college to gain skills. I just have mixed. Yeah,
it's really interesting that our son has ended up in computer science doing this job. He was always very good at puzzling things together.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much at foreign languages, but like those things where you would put squares and triangles and rhombuses and everything into. He could do those, and I thought all kids could. And I remember kids coming over, and I'd be like, "Okay, here's a game," and they would be like, "What the hell is this?" And Dizzy loved those things. And when he was just in film in the art department, he just couldn't connect with the people. And it was interesting because, he grew up with 2 artist parents, but he just didn't feel like they were his people.
Yeah, also maybe saturated with it. And, also.
And then he found the computer people and he just really clicked. And he seems like it's going really well for him, and he's excited about it, and he feels like it's super creative. It's all puzzle. It's all about solving puzzles.
Right.
in through math,
So
a lot of math.
are you in Seattle?
Yeah,
Ah, okay. I've actually never been to Seattle. But
it's really beautiful.
I've heard
I
it's
think people think it's so rainy because they come at Christmas time to visit family, and about halfway through December through halfway through February, all it does is rain. And so that's what people think it is. And, you know, it's either raining or it's snowing wherever you are that I've lived. So here it rains. But during that time, sure, you want to get out of here from time to time. But the rest of the year, it's been so beautiful. Like the last 2 weeks, it's been sunny and spring. And I'm actually really falling in love with the weather.
so good. Okay, here is
Oh, we have a person.
we have a student.
Hello.
Oh,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm your tech TA if you guys need any help.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm like rotating through all of the sessions right now to make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
We were just going to try to shift gears because we thought we had a
We're-
participant.
Go for no audience, so we'll just hang out and wait until some
Everything's going fine so far, except we have to go.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna go check out another session then.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they kind of simultaneously scheduled,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a bit odd because I guess you just choose whatever you're gonna
That works if you have thousands of participants, but
right.
All right, see you guys.
Thank
okay.
Yeah, I think people are really wearying of.
So what is your connection with this? Just because I'm interested too. You know, how did you end up going from working at MoMA and writing about artists to becoming more?
Yeah, I mean, after I was at MoMA, I went to Yale. I was the deputy director for the Yale Art Gallery for about 6 years. I was brought in to integrate the use of collections across disciplines at the university, and as that was a new position that was created as a response to the sort of a study of the undergraduate curriculum that was done by Dick Broadhead, who was the dean of students at the time. He's now the president of Duke. And one of the findings was, Yale has the third largest collection of art in the world, if you include the libraries, and it's completely underutilized. And so, that was one of the calls to action. And so I was basically brought in to develop programs across undergraduate and graduate study to make the use of the collections more prevalent across the board. And it was just an amazing project because, you come into a very, staid university environment where people are in their lanes, but if you're actually given an assignment from the top, you can make change. You know what I mean? And
Right. If you have those people on your side.
Yeah, and so I basically spent 5
And your
years.
job was to get them to change lanes to.
Right. So it was kind of perfect, and there was a renovation of this incredible historic Louis Kahn building going on simultaneously, and just the arts at Yale were sort of they were being sort of reinvigorated by new thinking. So I was sort of part of that.
Oh,
moment.
that sounds fabulous.
And it was an incredible experience, and I worked with great people, and the collection was amazing, and the students were great, and we integrated new classes for students from public schools all over New Haven. And then sort of 2 things happened. One, I had a terrible series of disagreements with the director, who was a real bully and kind of rager. And
when was this? Towards the end of when you were there, or the whole time?
In about the last year
that
I was there, our relationship just disintegrated, and he just, he's sort of a known bully, but of course this is 2008, before before there might have been a public action, And
Oh, right, I
basically,
know.
like, you know, I negotiated away. I negotiated a,
An exit.
an exit. And, you know, it really was, I mean, then it was 2008 and I was like, do I really want to, you know, first of all, there were no jobs in New York, like in the art world. And then I was also like, do I really want to be in that? Like the next position would have been, you know, museum director. And I really, you know, felt quite burned about the situation. And so I just spent.
It's hard. I mean, my reaction is to want to become autonomous.
Well, that's why I have my own business.
Okay.
You know, so basically what happened was I spent a year. I mean, that was a year was preparing for this exhibition in France. So I had, you know, this big personal project that then I was able to just completely focus on. And I started doing speech writing for a politician. I got very involved, you know, thinking about going into politics. There was you know, sort of in 2008, there was this sort of big movement to get more women involved in politics. And I was sort of
Remember that.
being groomed a bit for that. And then I was just like, this is not, you know, it's moved way too slowly for me, you know, and I don't want to like be like chief of staff and then this and then, you know, the state. I just didn't want to spend that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. But I got very involved in a project in my county around with a group of farmers who wanted to get state land accessible for growing food for the county. And the politician I was writing for asked me if I would manage the project. And so, hold on.
It was just empty farmland.
Well, it was state land that would be used for growing.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, the interesting thing.
What did you grow?
Well, it was a whole process of getting legislation passed in order for there to be able to be growing done on this.
Okay.
So the project I was involved with was really like getting the piece of legislation written and then passed. And so I did that, and I just got really interested in sort of this farming movement. You know, this is 2008. It's sort of the beginning of like the farm to table movement, which now seems like, you know, 100 years ago.
It does.
You know, but it was sort of the beginning of that becoming a little bit more mainstream.
We have it. We have a place in Vermont too. We lived in Vermont before Pennsylvania, so it goes back further there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I ended up meeting with someone who was had a huge catering company in New York, and she had a daughter who died very young unexpectedly, and she wanted to make a program to honor her daughter, and she had just bought a farm upstate, and so we met. You know, she was like looking for someone to like build a healthy eating program of some kind, but she didn't quite know what. And I was like, well, you know, food hasn't really been my angle, but you know, building programs, all the rest of it certainly is.
Right.
Anyway, long story, we hit it off. She said, will you come do this thing with me? And I said, sure, you know, I'll come and like work on it, help you design it, spend a couple years. Then there I was 7 years later. That program became, you know, went from like 300 to 25,000 students, and was designed as a healthy eating program for youth and families living in public housing in New York.
And is that who your partner still is? Is that the one?
No.
Okay.
So during the course of that, you know, we also worked with some farmers to get their surplus into food banks and into community centers in New York. And through that process, you know, I just saw this incredible, you know, I mean, of course, dearth of access to healthy food for people living in public housing, but B, this enormous excess of that farmers had of food that they couldn't do anything with because there were, you know, it wasn't enough freezer space or there was no processing or whatever. So that really was the kind of beginning of thinking about, you know, what does a business look like that, you know, that turns this excess food into healthy, affordable food.
Right.
So, you know,
so how did you make it financially viable for?
So that, that's where we are now. So over a 3-year period, we, developed supply chain, we, worked on business proposition, et cetera. And we now aggregate surplus and turn it into shelf stable vegetable products for institutional food service.
With a lot of dried foods and broths, is that?
Mostly right now it's broths and soups. So that's kind of the lane we're in right now. But we just released our first product last year. And right when COVID shut everything down. So that was kind of like this crazy moment of
Right.
of where, of just like, oh my God, like, are we going to have a business in a year? But we were able to pivot. And of course there was a huge need for food.
Right, so you shifted from schools to
So shifted from schools
and housing projects.
food banks and that kind of thing. And now we're working with large institutional food service programs. So,
So is it just a lot less expensive, or?
It's not a lot less expensive. It's significantly less expensive, and we're producing at a very large scale. So, hold on, I'm just gonna go get my dog from barking.
Okay.
Since it's turning into an informal conversation, I'm gonna be more informal. Hold on. So we're working with like food service providers, like at Penn State. Actually, we did talk to someone at Penn State. Penn State buys all their own food directly, and they have warehouses because it's such a big operation. But most food service providers buy through group purchasing organizations. So we're selling through Food Buy, which is the largest GPO in North America. And that means that all the Compass companies like Flick, Bon Appetit, Restaurant Associates, Chartwells can buy large amounts for less money. So that's how we're able to sell into it. And it's still, these are very, very early days. We cannot.
It seems as if it would be almost as expensive to gather the food from the fields and still, deliver it to the manufacturers. And
we're working with seconds and imperfects and also remnant streams. So if you imagine, all the vegetable, I just say, like, imagine all the vegetable that's not there when you see carrot sticks and celery sticks, like, from
that's left in the field, or
that just gets cut and thrown in the garbage. So we're essentially collecting that, doing all the appropriate federally required paperwork, and then we turn that into food and sell it that way. But what's, the two areas that are allowing us to compete are both the fact that our products have a positive environmental footprint. So we're diverting waste from landfill, which is I think it's why we got invited into this sustainability today.
Okay.
And also we're, minority and women-owned business. And so there's a big push to have more diverse suppliers in the food service space.
Right.
So that is allowing us to sell into big contracts. So, like, we're working on something with Google, and we're working on something with Kaiser Permanente, and like big programs that are looking to have healthier products, lower sodium products, positive environmental impact, diverse suppliers.
Right.
So it's really like, partly an old-fashioned food business and all the challenges that come with that.
How is it an old-fashioned food business at all?
It's because it's, we're making, it's the mess of making food, supply chain, production, transport, all the, distribution, all the things you don't see when you buy something on the shelf is like the enormous amount of work that goes into getting a product out there. But so there's that, but there's also kind of the systems change aspect of what we're doing, which is really reintegrating nutritious byproducts into the, into manufacturing and and the edible scene. And I don't mean edibles, I mean like, food that is edible. Although people are like, why don't you do like an upcycled edible drink? I'm like, someone else is going to do that.
Right. That's already, right. That's probably already being done.
Probably already being done. So yeah, so that's kind of, that's like a bit of an overview. And I actually have a really kind of great video that I was going to run, that maybe I should just do now. And
Sure.
Maybe they're going to use this later, or let's see.
I have no idea if they're keeping it as an archive or not.
And it's being recorded, so
Oh, okay.
I suppose.
So why don't you put that in there?
Yeah, why don't we can run this. I'm going to.
Is it the one from the website?
No, that
Oh,
was.
good.
I'm
Okay.
Anna Hammond.
Hold on. Let me see. I'm gonna have to share this. That might
Okay.
take a few seconds here, but let me figure out. Share screen. All right, so you tell me if you can see this,
It's coming up.
and I will run it. Can you see a black screen?
Yep. And we've moved to the corner.
Hello, I'm Anna Hammond, founder of Matriark Foods. Matriark Foods is working to build a better food system so that all people have the right and the access to healthy food, and to interrupt the catastrophic impact that food waste has on global warming. Before launching Matriark, I built a healthy eating program for youth and families living in New York City public housing. Part of that work focused on brokering relationships to get surplus food from farms into community centers and schools. I founded Matriark to address the lack of access to healthy, affordable food that I encountered working in public housing, to stop food from being wasted, to create a profitable business that would include new revenue streams for farmers, and to make the world a healthier place for future generations, including my 3 grandchildren. There is a growing collective urgency to act on the environmental issues that affect our planet and our health. The pandemic has exposed food waste and hunger on a terrifying scale. Companies, governments, and citizens are looking for solutions simultaneously. Food waste dramatically increases global warming. When you see a package of celery sticks, imagine all of the vegetable that's not there. Inefficiencies in food production are contributing to food waste on a staggering scale. 1 in 9 people is hungry. 1 in 3 suffers from a diet-related illness. If we are going to meet the UN SDG 12 goal to cut global food waste in half by 2030 and create better access to a healthy diet for a rapidly growing population, we have got to be bold. Matriark has a solution, and it's already working. Matriark upcycles farm surplus and fresh-cut remnants into healthy, delicious products for food service. Schools, hospitals, and food banks, places where communities are fed on a large scale every day. We partner across sectors of the food system, addressing inefficiencies in the supply chain at a disruptive scale, from farms to industrial facilities, to activate interventions that will feed large numbers of people. We do this in 3 ways: products, partnerships, and processing. Working with a large-scale contract co-packer, Matriark developed and launched the first of its kind upcycled vegetable broth concentrate in Tetra Pak recart shelf-stable cartons for food service. It's made with vegetable remnants, just like a homemade broth. It's low sodium, easy to use, and helps institutions achieve their sustainability goals. US Foods, the 2nd largest food distributor in the United States, signed us on, and we sold out our first commercial production. Why food service? Food service in the United States is a $72 billion industry in which over 50% of meals are eaten by a largely captive audience in dire need of healthy food. Matriark has shown that it is possible to redirect farm surplus and waste streams at a massive scale into a product and profitably get that product to market. Matriark is also developing partnerships with national vegetable companies that add product lines from recovered remnants, save waste from landfill, and maximize industrial food system logistics. By utilizing existing processing infrastructure, we capture vegetable remnants right where they're cut. We can explore more nimble processing and packaging options and deliver delicious, affordable, upcycled products through already established national distribution channels. And finally, there is a crippling bottleneck in the food system. There is simply not enough available processing infrastructure to manage the supply or the demand. We are working with a team of stakeholders to design and pilot Matriark One, a mid-scale, agile production facility that will be solely devoted to upcycling vegetables. Our innovative and transformative solution will build long-term resiliency in the food system. Matriark is part of a movement to maximize the value of our natural resources and create a sustainable, circular economy that supports the well-being of people and the preservation of nature. We are proving that a profitable business can achieve these goals. Upcycled, shelf-stable food is inextricably linked to logistics, processing, packaging, and distribution. The better the links, the more effective the partnerships, the greater the impact. The solutions are here, and the time is now.
That's good.
So that's sort of the overview.
Right. So I guess from it just seems like such a huge undertaking, massive. I mean, it's great that you got involved in politics first. It seems as if that can only help. But as far as the upcycling of food waste, I mean, I can imagine the effort trying to get food processors to take all of that food that was wasted and divert it into some other stream. It just sounds huge, and there must not be the facility. So you were talking about creating a place that would that would actually take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail
Would they
on the
gather
head.
it and then produce it? And so are you creating whole factories, or what are you doing?
We're not yet creating our own factory. We are working with, large processors from whom we're gathering remnants. And we work with a traditional co-packer, actually in Pennsylvania, who has been just a marvelous partner in, doing something that no one's really done before, which is kind of taking these new supply streams and also helping us put them back, make them viable supply streams, like by requiring all the paperwork, and then we go back and we work with the processors to ensure that there's traceability on every piece of this. But the long game of really being able to upcycle large quantities will be having a different kind of processing facility that's fully devoted to this. Because even with a great partner in co-packers, and this has been shown, in kind of high relief during COVID, the demand on processing is so massive. It's very difficult to even get a slot in.
Exactly. I would imagine that would be the right.
And, and big companies like, let's say Rayo's, or, just pick any look at any grocery store shelf and the massive quantities of products.
And so if you became a processor, if you created a processing plant, would you also consider processing for other food?
Well, one of the things we're really trying to figure out through this research and development of that is, what is the business model that works best? Is it that you have a processing facility that's fully devoted to processing, to upcycling, remnants, imperfects, surplus, etc. And you have, this is what we think is the solve. You have 2 or 3 institutional clients, who contract those particular products for their use, and that's the baseline business model. And then then you can add on, within the rest of the system, other customers. And really it's trying to figure out like what the ecosystem is for making that a viable business.
So it's not just about creating food for Matriark. It's about Matriark facilitating this process as it catches on in a bigger
and also
food production.
because the whole issue of supply and demand needs to be rethought, because you've got giant companies making massive amounts of bad quality food that then can be sold really cheaply, way too much of it, and then you've got food waste, or they're donating it to food banks, which means that people who are getting donations are in large part getting not very healthy food, because it's also subsidized by the federal government,
Right, so that needs to shift also.
There's a whole shift in mentality of like what we need to make from the consumer side, not just sort of from the producer's side.
So politics needs to,
politics.
I mean, you need to hold hands with politicians in order to make this happen.
Policy and the USDA and governmental structures around food, are whole, a part of the problem and part of the solution. So
So that must have been tough during Trump's administration.
Yeah, well, luckily I wasn't doing this then, so. We started this business sort of like mid, almost in the last 2 years of that administration.
Okay.
But on the other hand, sometimes those kinds of bad politics can inspire a lot of heavy duty activism, which of course
It certainly has
seen that, and you see that throughout history,
Mhm.
and not just recent history, ancient history,
Right.
Roman times. Like another reason why we need to, circling back to our conversation about what is of value to study.
Right. I mean, that's what the one thing to appreciate for the Trump administration is the fact that everyone was talking politics for the first time in my lifetime, practically.
Well, yeah, and that's
Maybe
good.
not during the 60s, but then I was too young to be involved.
Right. I mean, it's everyone needs to be involved in civic action. And I think, Americans are particularly, North Americans, and I just mean people in the United States in general have this feeling of like, oh, I live here and it's great, and I don't have to be involved. It's like, if you're
No, they take it for granted.
in a country where there are roads, electricity, and water, like, you need to be involved if you want clean water coming out of your pipes. You're involved in politics.
Right.
So this disconnect between what we do and how we live and the taxes we pay and
where it goes,
that our country works, maybe people have a little bit more of a sense of kind of engagement around that. So,
well, I think also as the infrastructure starts to fall apart, it's becoming more apparent.
Yeah, so I think it's really some of these infrastructure projects that the Biden administration is talking about and engaging with are great. And
so do you feel like you're part of that with Matriark?
Part of a movement, I think.
It seems as if it's almost part of the infrastructure.
Yeah,
of a healthier.
Certainly, we are certainly part of that movement for sure, and obviously what we're doing supports a movement toward better infrastructure that is better for people and better for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's we're at another kind of like another kind of maybe post-industrial revolution, rethinking. People always say like big food is bad, big industry is bad. I'm like, yes, and it wasn't built to damage, you know, it was built to get people off the farm. It was built to get lots of food to people in very distant places. And yet, you know, and so the inefficiencies were also the efficiencies at that time. So what
Right.
we really need to do is collaborate.
I was going to say, you want to take some of that with you.
The infrastructure that exists, you know, Eisenhower's transportation across this country, like, yes, our road system was built to move military vehicles quickly, but it
Right.
also allows us to get food to far-flung places where people need it. So,
Right.
you know, I think something unique about our business is that we are really working with, you know, with like really like everyone who touches the food system, from the consumer.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's interesting because it seems like it should be part of the healthcare system too, which is becoming more known as part of the infrastructure as public insurance becomes, you know, Obamacare and all that starts to.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, that's why we have
take hold.
healthcare businesses starting to talk to us about, you know, about buying our products. So, you know, because our products are not only, you know, healthier for people, they're also healthier for the environment. And,
Right.
so, you know, so
it becomes a link in that whole infrastructure of how to keep a healthier world. Yeah.
Yeah. So
these climate change and
early days, but it's going well. And you know, sorry more students didn't come onto this call. We're always
me too, but I'm glad I was here.
We're always looking for interns and engaging young people. So
well, that's good to know. I mean, does Helen know that?
She does, yeah. So I think that was sort of the purpose of bringing us into this.
Okay, because the sustainable people at Penn State, the whole institution is just beginning too. I mean, when I was there, they were just sort of starting to link students to the farmland and to maybe a meal once a year. You know, it was really beginning.
Right. No,
so.
I mean, we would love to get into the Penn State procurement. It's
with the whole history of agriculture there.
Right. No, I know. So yeah. So if you think there's anyone we should be connected to, you know, I can't think of who it would be, but
no, I think Helen would be a good. She's great at connecting. So you should talk to her more about it. I mean, I don't know. I was never as good at that.
Yeah, no,
but
she's a great connector of people.
She is, and it sounds like you are too. You have that in common.
Well, it's synthesizing things, I guess. So, all right. Well, it's great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, and thank you, Anna. I hope our paths cross. And if you do sell your house, which I think you're sort of nuts, but I get it. You know, it's exciting to start a whole new life out in New Mexico, and there's nowhere that I know of that needs better an improvement in food and education and all these things. Then, I mean, New Mexico really could use a hand in all of that stuff. So
yeah, well, all my kids are sort of involved in different levels of that, so it's exciting for them too. So
does your son at Kenyon want to go to New Mexico also and join the path?
You know, eventually. I mean, who knows? You know, he's at the beginning of making all those things. He's got, you know, barely a year finished.
So what made them move there?
They basically like wanted to leave the East Coast, wanted a better work-life balance. You know, one of the families has two kids now. One was just, you know, had one on the way, and they visited Seattle, they visited Portland, they visited Boise, they went to Salt Lake City, Santa Fe, maybe a couple other places, and they basically like had, you know, thought that Santa Fe was like really beautiful, had all the other things like housing, et cetera.
So they're in Santa Fe.
So they're in Santa Fe, yeah. And you know, who knew that COVID would hit? And
because I have a friend whose daughter just moved to Albuquerque. She loves it out there, and she wanted to get out of the East Coast too. It was definitely a way to escape it.
Everyone's sort of able to work partly remotely, partly in the office, and they hike and bike literally every day. So
Right, it's great.
you know, it's kind of perfect.
Right. Okay.
All right,
Well,
well,
thank you
thanks.
very much.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye-bye.